Okay, I'm still getting set up, so give me just a minute. Let me see. Hey, Skip. Hey, Tammy. What's up, DB? Veronica, hello. I wanted to go over a few things. I was actually listening to Travis and Fiend talk, and I'll probably go back to listening after I finish this. I wanted to do it earlier, but today just did not go as planned, so I'm doing it now. I'm trying to set up my share screen. Let me see. Yeah, here we go. Okay, so before I do share my screen, I'm still trying to get caught up on the filings, making the dynamic files where if you click on one document, you should be able to click on any of the exhibits or case law or other things, because for me, I am kind of detail oriented, but I also, there's so much information. Sometimes it's easy for me to, when I click on another browser, to look something up just to kind of refresh my memory on what something in the filing is referring to, because this has gone on so long, it's easy for me to get distracted. So I find for me, it's easier to stay on task if I can just click it right then and just pull it up and then stay within the document instead of the very many different trails I could fall down. So the one I'm currently on is going back to the beginning with the call logs and the order of how this all came about. And the most recent filing I got to was the motion to suppress the second statements from the second interview. And I'm just combing through all the stuff, and I went back through the filings to get at least up to date through this filing. All of the statements that Holeman made and Mr. Allen made, trying to reconstruct the depositions and the interviews and the correspondence chains, all of that. And so that's what I'm about to pull up, just for a little bit of context, is I'm going to start with October 13th when he first came in and just kind of go through the order of events until early November, because I have some questions and some concerns. So I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to start there. So October 13th is the day that they asked Mr. Allen to come in for questioning the first time. He met with Mullen and Liggett. He was under the impression that they were following up on what he called in 5 years and 8 months earlier. And I assume he was probably as confused as Betsy Blair was in 2019, or probably the juvenile witnesses who got calls in 2020 and random. There seems to me to be not a whole lot of rhyme or reason to the order of people who were called back in for questioning for years afterwards, whether they were a witness or, I don't know, they act like they had no suspects ever. So I guess person of interest. But that's kind of, from all of the filings I could find, that seems to be where Mr. Allen was coming from. And so that's kind of how I'm approaching this. So I'm just going to jump in. At the very beginning, he was read his Miranda rights. He even signed an advisement of his rights, which is normal protocol, especially when you're talking about a high-profile case. That seems to be important enough to where they did stop what they were doing to take care of that before proceeding. So there's no context for the moment they read him his rights and had him sign the form until about 10 minutes into this thing. I don't know if they were small talking or trying to lull him into a false sense of security or what, but the next thing we know is that he tells them he got there around noon. And it looks like a minute or so later, he tells them he probably left around 1:30. And the only context we have is from defense. But for the for most of the interview, he seems to think he's answering questions, just trying to refresh his memory. Like, what can you remember? Did you see this person? Did you see that person? Does this sound familiar? I'm not real sure how they filled that time, but I also don't know how long this lasted. All we know is after he told them these two things, he starts realizing that they're accusing him. So when that becomes obvious to him, he speaks up and says, I don't want to be somebody's fall guy, and we're going to try and make pieces of a puzzle fit somewhere they don't fit so we can close this thing. I'm not saying you guys, please don't think I'm questioning your integrity. That's not what I'm saying. And instead of them, I don't know, getting any sort of clue, they're like, "Oh, this is a good time to crank this up." I'm pretty sure Liggett had his little detective certificate for about um I think he had that thing for about a year and a half. No, yeah, about a year and a half before the murders actually happened. And so I guess the only thing he has done in between getting that little certificate and now is whatever whatever training the prosecutor sent everybody to, which works on innocent people as well as it does guilty people. So money well spent, Carroll County. I I don't think the prosecutor cares about that part though. Okay, so he he's irritated. I think anybody would be irritated at this point because he cannot be the only person who knows that this whole time, especially after you've got to remember this whole year, they had the election coming up, and Liggett was getting a lot of questions about Flora and Delphi, and he had no answers on either one. Everybody knew that they had no idea what happened. And anytime they tried to pretend like they've been working hard at it this whole time, it it falls pretty flat every time because they have nothing to show for it. But they still tried, whatever. So this Mr. Allen catches on to that pretty quick. He's talking about you guys are going to ruin my reputation. The thing that's interesting about this is what law enforcement is using to justify why we can't have anything done out in the open. Everything's got to be sealed. They're acting like a homicide case is something that needs to be top secret because we're all just too dumb or interested. I'm not real sure. Diener's order was not real clear on what the actual problem was, but he's saying you're going to ruin people's reputation or you're going to ruin my reputation. And you would think that the people who'd been saying for the last 5 years not to do side by sides with sketches or any of this because you could ruin innocent people's lives. You think the people who've been saying that would actually have meant it, but they didn't because they don't care about that. Because the state is now using these statements against him, which is why I don't ever try to help the police. They shouldn't need your help. They should be able to do some police work to figure this out. And if they need your help, it's because they're not doing police work. Okay. So this whole thing ends poorly. He goes in thinking he's going to help. He catches on pretty quick that they're trying to make puzzle pieces fit, whether they fit or not. And he gets up and leaves. He gets up and leaves because they read him his Miranda rights and he understood, I can leave. So he left. And not only did he leave, when they got home, he turned around and called and he's like, by the way, when can I get my car? Because he was not someone who was making plans to flee because he'd been caught or any of that shit. He was someone who left and was about done with these people, and now he wants his car back. That's kind of the vibe I get from this because that's how I would feel. But I would think anybody who was worried that they'd finally been caught would be getting rid of shit, running away. He wasn't. He was like, give me I have work. I'm going back to work. This is all signs of someone who is irritated and not guilty and has shit to get back to. So this is what happens on the 13th. I would assume that's kind of where it stays until, let me go back to the 17th now. The next thing that happens Hang on. I gotta go back to October. So the next thing is not actually, I don't think, I haven't found it in the filings. If it's there, maybe in a later one, we'll figure it out. But as far as I can tell, wait a second. Oh, I see. I went to the wrong one. Hold on. My folders are not cooperating. Give me a second. All right, the 17th. I'm pretty sure they just call, but it says either Rick or Kathy call the ISP police post. I'm pretty sure in Lafayette. Oh, come on. There we go. Okay, either Kathy or Rick contact the state police to determine how and when they could get their vehicle back because they had been trying and it did not go real well on the 13th. They were trying to explain we're trying to get back to work. And after a few phone calls back and forth, finally on October 26th, Rick and Kathy were scheduled to arrive at the police post in West Lafayette at 9 a.m. to pick up the car. State police told Rick and Kathy that upon arrival, their car would be released and never mentioned anything about further questioning. So the next thing after the 17th, hang on. Then we have the 19th, and that is when Mr. J. Harper gets these ridiculous ballistics tests back that, oh, come on. my internet is, my internet is telling on me. Hang on. Okay, hang on. Before I go to this, let me see. I'm going to come say hello while this loads. Oh my gosh. I don't know why it's actually being this slow. There we go. I'll go through that in a minute. Hi, Salty Sleuth Investigates. Okay, you have been an excellent recommendation. I'm pretty sure Sleuthy, I saw her recommend it on Twitter. I have been binge watching your stuff. Uh, Woman doing impossible things. Hello. Oh my gosh, why is it trying to reload? I didn't even go back yet. Okay, so on the 19th, he's been, okay, let me start over. I'm a little scattered, sorry. October 13th, he goes in, thinks that he's following up. Oh no, hold on. Hang on. There we go. Okay, so on the 13th, he goes in, he thinks he's clarifying or answering questions or following up on something that happened 5 years ago. And he figures out real quick they're trying to make him fit. So he says, bye-bye. And then they call that night, please give me my car back. State police start playing games. So they call back again on the 17th and are a little pushier about it. And they finally get scheduled, they're like, we're coming to get this. But then the next thing that actually happens in between them being scheduled to come pick it up is this stupid thing where a bullet they found in the woods in the middle of a hunting area is for some reason the state's big evidence. In my mind, I'm like, okay, this is it's brass. I'm not even gonna go there. This is apparently in a court of law. I'm not even surprised. Something that was developed. It's a field of study. I think they should continue studying it so that we can learn more about it. I do not think it should be treated as something we can take people. We can't be ripping people from their families based on this shit, though. This is something we need to learn more about. Even the examiner called it subjective, which is once you call something subjective, you're done. Like the fact that judges are legitimizing subjective stuff as anything is scary, whatever. This is the next thing that happens. And if you think I'm being ridiculous or obtuse, Then explain to me why nothing happens from the 19th. Nothing happens until the 26th. So this thing that Nick McClellan is going to be trying to convince all these people is just bombshell evidence, seals his fate. They didn't do anything though. They're like, okay, we found this monster we've been hunting for 5 years, but let's give him a week to say his goodbyes. Like I'm not gonna try to make sense of that because it makes no sense to me. But the next thing after that, they bring him in, and this is the part that I've been all worked up about all day. But I'm just gonna read through this because R&M has done a lot of stuff on the safekeeping issues, all of that, and if you're not caught up on any of that, you should go watch the streams. But I'm kind of leading into some of this, and I guess because all the stuff that they're going through, I've been digging all this back up, and other stuff is clicking and making me. I have even more concerns than I did before. Let me just put it that way. Okay, so October 26th, 9 a.m. This is all the information that I just went over. I'm gonna skip down to this part where it's when they're walking in the door. They drive out there to get the vehicle, and when they arrive, Holeman meets them at the front and says, I just have a few things I want to clear up real quick before I give you your car back. And Holeman says, Rick, can you come with me? And asks Kathy. He asks Kathy to stay there. And Rick's like, fuck it, fine, let's go, let's get this over with. And when they start walking down this hallway, Holeman's like, actually, we're going to go to this little tiny room here without any windows, and closes the door. And that's how this thing starts. And the first part of the tape is missing. There's nothing there. He's not doing any of the stuff that even the Keystone 1 and Keystone 2 in Carroll County were able to handle. They were able to do that first thing. Holeman, no. I don't know if he just like was there that day and saw that they walked in. He's like, let me take a pass at him. I don't know if he had already lost control of his emotions. I don't know what the deal is, but he skipped it. This is a high profile investigation. It's scary that someone in his position would even be so willy-nilly about it, but he was. I don't know why I'm surprised. 7 minutes in is the first indication we have of anything. Jerry Holeman tells Rick Allen, we have experts that say that's you on the bridge, and that's your voice on video. A few minutes later, Jerry Holeman leaves the room and tells Mr. Allen, sit tight, and then shuts the door behind him. About 3 minutes later, Mr. Allen, he says, I'm going to stop this. I'm done. And Holeman, just like he did with Fortson, ignores it, keeps going. He's like, I don't give a shit. I'm going to keep berating you. I'm going to keep pushing you. And I'm going to keep acting like laws and rules and all kinds of shit does not apply to me. Because that's apparently something Holeman does. We've seen that with Fortson. We've seen that now with Mr. Allen. I would love to hear from the other people who've been on the shit end of dealing with this dipshit because he's not real nice. He's not real like, I don't understand what he's trying to accomplish. Like, he jumps right into this shit. The next thing after Mr. Allen says, I want to leave, Mr. Holeman's just not even, he's like, okay, well, witnesses saw your gun in your pocket. Then he launches into experts are saying that's you on the video, and experts are saying that's you down the hill. He's just trying to berate him into these details. And then the next thing, Holeman leaves the room and tells Mr. Allen, hang on 1 second. And then he shuts the door behind him. This is the second time he's left the room, and he's already been advised by this person in this room that he just closed in, that that person doesn't want to speak to him anymore. Holeman's ignoring that. The next indication after this, I have no idea how long Holeman left him in there. The next timestamp we get is 40 minutes in. And Holeman's, I'm not lying to you about anything. Everything I'm telling you is a fact. The experts are saying that's you saying this. The whole down the hill shit. The next thing after that is, I'm not lying to you, Rick. That's unethical, which he was lying, which is unethical. And that's exactly he doesn't care. He did it anyway. He obviously did it anyway. So that tells me, Holeman tells me more about him in this interview than he tells anybody else about Mr. Allen. And that's just where I'm at with this dipshit. The next thing after that, when Jerry Holeman leaves the room, again, sit tight, and then shuts the door again. So Holeman is just at this point seems to be irritated because this is not leading anywhere. He's denying all of this. This is actually not facts. It's not persuasive. It's not compelling. If it was, they wouldn't have had to lure him here. They would have, when you have evidence of someone's guilt and it's someone you've been hunting for a long time, if you have probable cause, you just go get them. You don't have to do all these little tricks to trick them into coming in and then coming into, like, you just go get them. That's how it works. They didn't go get this man because they didn't have shit. Anyway, the next thing after this, it starts getting heated. I don't have timestamps for this because defense just kind of included excerpts from the transcript instead, like word for word, which is good, but I don't have timestamps to put. I don't know if this is part of the stuff that was filled in. I did my best to try to just figure out how it could have flowed, but just keep that in mind. And what was supposed to be an exploratory interview, Holeman is heard on video saying the prosecutor and the other investigators, they want to lock you up and throw away the key. Holeman's barking at Allen, telling him, if you don't tell me, you're going down for this. He then starts with do you realize the death penalty is on the table for this? He is saying this to a man who told him he was there earlier, that he has no evidence against, and he's threatening him with the death penalty and saying that everybody is already decided. This is where we're at with this. This is not police work, by the way. This is not proving anything. This is just him having a hissy fit. At various times, Holeman is yelling, including profanity-laced language, while accusing Mr. Allen of the murders. Again, with no evidence. Holeman has nothing in this interview that he didn't have the day before and like the 7 days before that. But he's acting like he has something else when he doesn't. Holeman says the evidence clearly indicates you're involved in this. Mr. Allen, nope. Holeman, it fucking does. Mr. Allen, it doesn't. I'm telling you, there's no way a bullet from my gun was used in these murders. Holeman says, and I'm telling you that we had this fucking round on February 14th, and it's been secured in a fucking laboratory, and we've tested other guns. And you know what? Some of those other guns, they kept for like 6 months because they couldn't actually rule them out, because all this shit is subjective. They held on to it because it's not conclusive. They couldn't rule it out because you could test it on a whole bunch of guns, and a whole bunch of them are actually going to be pretty compatible, and you're not going to be able to rule them out. That does not mean it's a match. I'm going to try to not get sidetracked. I've been reading Holeman's bullshit all day, so I'm a little worked up. The next thing he says is, you could have taken it from somewhere else then because it's not possible. Holeman says, I did not take it from somewhere else. It was logged in. It was taken. It was photographed. You think we fucking took around and threw it down by the dead girl's foot? This ain't fucking TV. This is realistic. This is also called feeding crime scene details to your suspect. That's also what this is called. And incredible, whatever. Allen, I'm telling you, I can't explain something like that. This is where we're at the point where they're messing with his mind. When someone tells you, we found, like, these experts are telling us all these things, the prosecutor now believes it. Kind of like Holeman did with Fortson. Oh, I'm going to go speed dial the judge and see if she wants to throw your ass in jail. This stuff, when you're about an hour in and you're in a situation where you're with, number one, a giant ass man who's yelling and berating you, and he's kind of fidgety and a little bit hyper, and he's going in and out, he's kind of disorganized. That's what Mr. Allen is facing right now. He's at this point where he's like, okay, fine, fuck it, whatever you say, I can't refute an expert from this little room here. I don't know what to tell you. That's kind of where we're at this stage. And then Holeman never tells him that he's under arrest. And even when Mr. Allen continually denies having anything to do with this, he even says, well, go ahead and arrest me then. Like, if you've got all this evidence, fine, arrest me. He's like challenging Holeman. Why don't you arrest me then? If this is so compelling, why am I still sitting here? Holeman even says, but you're not under arrest. And so then he's messing with his head a little bit further because the door is still closed and he's still not free to leave. He still doesn't have his car. And in his mind, that's the whole reason they're there, is to get this car. And he's like, well, fuck, how am I going to get my car back? What is going on? What is happening? This is this is all because of Holeman. He's causing chaos, confusion. This is not productive. It's not helpful. Um, it just, every time he gets involved, it just starts getting bad and confusing, and then all of a sudden nobody knows what's what, and the next few days is going to get even blurrier. But Holman repeatedly tells Mr. Allen to explain what happened and attempts to coax Mr. Allen to tell him for all kinds of reasons, which is kind of explains why Holman's like, well, I don't think you're a bad person. Like, Holman's getting kind of desperate. He's trying to like appeal to anything he can think of. Like, well, maybe I can get him to admit to something that I can use. And Mr. Allen, because he's not guilty and he's not trying to play mind games, he's just trying to get his car, is like, you fucking idiot. What kind of good person kills two people? Like, what are you talking about? He's not buying this. And Holman gets angry every time and starts saying dumb shit. Throughout the interrogation, Holman explicitly tells Mr. Allen that the prosecutor and other law enforcement officers believed he engaged in the accused conduct. And Holman questions throughout the entire interrogation. He's accusing him the whole time. He's not asking or trying to find anything out. He's accusing him nonstop. Mr. Allen tells him, you're going to pay for what you've done to my wife. You want to fuck with me? Fuck with me. But you leave my wife out of this, fuck you, leave me out of this. Holman tells Mr. Allen, no, you are involved in this. Your fucking round is there, Rick. We don't know whose fucking round that is because it's a round in the woods where people hunt, and they have never explained how that bullet got from where it was ejected to where they found it. They have not even connected it to the crime, and not just because a bullet wasn't used in the actual violent act. They can't. The only reason they're even trying this shit is because they're pretending they heard it on video by the bridge. When they get to the other side of the creek, he already has their cooperation. He has already coerced them. And at that point in time, another weapon is used. They can't explain if he's like an ambidextrous ninja where he's putting the gun out, taking the knife away, like going back and forth as he's switching back and forth. They don't ever actually let anybody think that stuff through because they have no intention of explaining it. They kind of just seem to, they've been proceeding as if none of that matters. Like, we don't have to actually explain what happened. Let me see. Sorry, it got stuck on frozen. Holman is still trying this dumb shit. I'm not on video. Mr. Allen's like, neither am I. Holman tells him 4 or 5 witnesses didn't see me out there. Mr. Allen's like, me either. Holman says my round wasn't 6 inches away from a dead girl. Mr. Allen's like, mine wasn't either. Then Holman tries to berate him. You're going to drag your fucking wife and your daughter through this because you're too fucking bullheaded to get out in front of this and admit you made a mistake. And whatever the fuck happened out there, we'll never fucking know because you're too big of a fucking who knows. And in my mind, this applies to Holman more than it has applied to anybody else ever. Holman is dragging these families and everyone through this because he's the one who's too fucking bullheaded. He won't admit he's made mistakes, and he's the one who's making it just about impossible for any of us to ever find out what happened. So I don't know if this is like Freudian stuff where he's slipping with the details about the crime scene. I don't know what's going on. At the very, very end, this has gone on for 2 hours and 40 minutes. Holman tells him, you're guilty of something. I know it, and I'm going to fucking prove it. And he says that because he doesn't have shit. They did not have actually anything on this man. And at this point that they take him into custody, he did not provide them any information that made anything in that certificates of analysis thing any more compelling today than it did yesterday. This is the point where Holman is fed up. None of his bullshit has worked. And he probably just blurted out, "You're fucking under arrest. Like, you're not going anywhere. Fuck you. I'm going to do it." Like, he got ahead of himself. He didn't even read the Miranda rights. He got ahead of himself from the moment he started this, and this whole thing was not done well. It's embarrassing. I can't believe anybody is making excuses for him, like Nick and Mullen and people who are acting like this is good police work. It's not. Before I go to the next document, let's see. I'm not. Hello, Jenny. Hello, Straight Carp. My internet is so slow. Oh my gosh. With all Ann, Linda K. Hello, hello. Let's see. Ogre Jare, for real. What's up, Pansy Bay? Okay. Well, my screen is. They are allowed to lie. They do lie. It is unethical, and they do it anyway because one of the biggest issues I have with talking about the ballistic stuff is not because I'm not one of those people who thinks it's all junk science and it's not worth anything. I'm not one of those people who thinks lie detectors are all junk science. I think that we can learn certain things from both of these things in certain cases. And I think they can be used as resources to better inform avenues of exploration. And those kind of, like, I think they can be used as investigative tools. I think it's terrifying to use them as actual evidence, but we do because a lot of this stuff was developed from the beginning in a courtroom. And when you think about all of these little laboratories that look at all this shit, they were founded by law enforcement agencies to be used in a courtroom. They are run by law enforcement agencies. The people training all these people, okay, when you see this, this, and this, that is supposed to tell us this, this, and that. That's not scientific, and that's how it was done for like decades. I'm not trying to oversimplify it, but I mean, these are cops creating their own little field of study, and cops teaching other cops, okay, if you see these marks, it means this. And it's not because they figured it out in a laboratory, it's because they figured it out in the courtroom. And then they started trying to prove it in a laboratory. And when they got something that was consistent, they started using that. It's like the most, it's like almost a meme of itself, like how it has just gone and developed further and further. But at the end of the day, this was developed by cops, taught by cops. There's cops teaching other cops. When you see this, it means that. And over the last 10 or so years, there are more and more courts who are finally bringing in some actual experts, and they're making some headway on re-educating these people who have been in charge of our criminal justice system, locking everybody up, having everybody pay all these just, I mean, for misconduct, for wrongful convictions, all kinds of shit. Like, the amount of money we spend on that shit is alarming. But there are some courts across the country who are making some headway. I'm pretty sure Gold is going to let this expert come in and say whatever she wants. But luckily, her analysis that she signed can't give it more weight than she gave it. And the weight she gave it was that it's subjective. So good luck with that. I really hope people on this jury are able to understand that. But this is okay. So I want y'all to understand this is the 26th. They take him into custody and he is at Carroll County Jail. Hang on. I'm trying to get my little back button to go. Oh no. Hang on. I'm going to stop sharing because I don't know what screen that just took me to. Give me a second before I pull it up. Hold on. Okay. Let me pull my folder back up. The next thing that happens is his first hearing. And let me see. So from the moment Holman takes him into custody and he goes in Carroll County Jail, the next thing that we know of, hang on. Oh, I have to reshare my screen. Hold on. Let me do that. Okay. The next thing, on the 27th, the prosecutor files a verified request to prohibit public access to a court record. He files a probable cause affidavit, and he files some charges. That's on the 27th, the day after they take him into Carroll County. The day after that is the hearing. Let me pull that up. I don't know why I keep hitting the wrong button and taking me back to the folders. So, first order of business is, Lord help, this dipshit Diener. Oh my God. Little scaredy cat Diener, scared of everything, confuses computers actual that when we get to the safekeeping order, I mean it reads like a hysterical Yelp review / diary entry where he's just like whining. It has nothing to do with the case or anything. He's just whining. His orders are ridiculous. So on October 28th, the prosecutor files the please don't show anybody what we've been doing after begging the public for the past 6 years to help us figure this out because we don't know shit and we didn't know anything until the assistant manager at CVS showed up and explained it to us. Apparently, that's 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 where we're at. Thank you, Holeman. That's where he's left us. And Diener's like, yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. Let's do it under this rule that actually doesn't apply, which thank goodness the media interveners actually did start filing some shit saying that rule doesn't apply here. And even Judge Gold had to be like, that's not the right rule. Of course, she helped the prosecutor figure out a new rule to do this bullshit with. But this is all like, okay, we're going to hide shit. We're not going to tell anybody anything. And we're going to pretend it's because we are hard at work investigating all these other suspects that we are actually not doing shit about. He sets bond at $20 bazillion. Let me go and at least pull it up. He's like, oh yeah, probable cause for sure exists. Here's a cartoon amount of money, and we'll do a hearing in like an hour. And all super serious. This is a very serious judge who totally got here for, I'm sure there's lots of merits. I'm sure his mom has plenty of nice things to say. Now we're going to pull up this little initial hearing. This is where all of the stuff is, all the stuff that happened in the interrogation, all the stuff he said is not lining up with what's happening in the court record already in my mind. Because in this initial order, Mr. Allen went from I'm leaving, I don't want to do this, to 2 hours later he's under arrest. And Holeman has been yelling and berating him, and every time Mr. Allen, Holeman keeps leaving and closing the door, not letting Mr. Allen leave. And in my mind, all I can think is the only thing I have to relate it to is his interrogation of Fortson, which also did not go well and also did not end well. But he doesn't like it when people ask for an attorney. We know that much. And then all of a sudden here at this initial hearing, Diener's like, okay, we got to get this omnibus going, which they still have not had yet. If anybody can explain that, why it still has not been taken care of yet. I understand there's extenuating circumstances where that can be put off. I haven't been able to figure out if there's ever been an actual reason that has been articulated anywhere for why. I would like to know why. Diener is telling everybody that this man intends to hire private counsel. And he's told, you've got to get private counsel within 20 days or else you're going to be fucked by the omnibus, which was another idle threat because they still haven't had that. So how important could it be to these people? So there's just all these red flags that they're threatening Mr. Allen. If you don't do this, this is going to happen. And this is just how it's done because the experts and the laws, and then all of a sudden, all these things that they're saying, if you don't do this, this is going to happen. And then they're not doing any of those things still. So on the 28th, he's getting counsel. And then the next thing that happens, oh my gosh, come on, load. Then we are in, if I can get there, hold on. Where are you at? Where are you at, November? So on the 29th, defense releases this press release. The last date it was actually put out anywhere was on the 1st, but it was actually put out on the 29th. And the only reason it got more airtime on the 1st is because Jerry Holeman and Murder Sheet went around telling everybody, "Oh, this guy that we arrested, yeah, this tip got lost, not because we totally lied about what's in it, but because they threw like an imaginary civilian personnel person under the bus," which is incredible, but I'll get to that later and I'll have to revisit that. But on the 29th, that is between now and, hang on, I'm trying to get this other thing to load. That's not the only thing that happened. That's the only thing. I'm getting ahead of myself. Sorry. Okay. Mr. Allen, or not Mr. Allen, Mr. Holman writes a report on November 1st, and he says, "I interviewed Mr. Allen, and I asked him if he remembered the other detectives reading him his Miranda rights like 2 weeks ago." And he was like, "Yeah, for sure, man." And I told him he was free to go, and the door was unlocked. Harper and Vito were on duty that day, but Holman doesn't name them. He doesn't say who these other detectives are. This is a high profile case, and he can't even be bothered. Like, they probably would have even covered for him, but this is such a lie. He's not even, he at least has the sense to not pull them into it, even though they were on duty and he probably could have gotten away with it. He didn't. So I just want to keep that in mind that on November 1st, he's putting together, these are the only pieces of information we know about this report on the 1st, but we do know it was written on the 1st. The other thing that happened on the 1st, oh my gosh, my folders are taking too long, is this. I'm going to put the original, not the typed version. We have ourselves a little envelope that was postmarked on November 1st. In Indianapolis, he had already been moved to White County Jail and had time to write this and mail it. In this letter, he is begging for the court's mercy. Nothing about this letter sounds like someone who's shopping for an attorney and looking around. This sounds like someone who was denied a phone. Like, he's trying to ask Holman, "I want to leave. I can't leave." He's like, "Fine, I want a lawyer." Holman does not like either of those requests, and so he just denies them because he's apparently used to that, because he does it as if it's second nature, no matter what setting he's in. But in my mind, he's like, "Well, fuck, I guess I have to get an attorney. They're telling me I can't get one. This initial hearing happened on a Friday." So maybe he thought, well, maybe if I can just call an attorney, they can at least clear this shit up. Well, that's not going to work either, because even just that costs a lot of money when they find out who he is, because Holman's running around leaking all this shit to people in the meantime, telling people all kinds of tales. He does it all throughout November. We'll get to all that in later videos, but this man does not sound like someone who was in front of Diener saying, "No, no, no, I'm good. I'm going to get counsel. This is all going. This is all fine. I understand everything that's happening." This is someone who has just been through a really confusing interrogation where he's talking to someone who is not a reasonable person. And all of a sudden, the prosecutor's drawn up chart. Like, all these people around this unreasonable man are proceeding as if any of this is normal when it's not. They're proceeding as if they have evidence when they don't. And they've got this unreasonable investigator feeding him crime scene details while also saying, "I don't know what you did, but I'm going to prove something." And then the prosecutors in court writing letters and trying to, like, shame people into being interested in this case that they just made a big arrest in. It's a very confusing couple of days, but after the first, the next thing that happens is the sheriff files a request for safekeeping because of all the chaos that's going on that they caused. Dina writes another order on the public hearing. This is in addition to the one from the 28th. And he's saying basically, we're going to have a hearing and we're not going to tell you shit though, because we're sealing it until we can have another hearing. Like, kind of like hurry up and wait. That's the only way I know how to describe it. Is this is a hurry up and wait order. And on the same day that he's telling people, okay, we've got movement, we're not telling you shit. The sheriff is like, okay, well, we need to put this man into the custody of the state at a prison, actually. And now we know that the judge basically wrote this, and Nick McClellan very astute of him to point out Tobe did in fact review it before signing it, which very helpful, Tobe. I don't know why Nick thought that was helpful to his case, but yes, Tobe did, like a very good, very big boy of him, to review it before signing it. Very good job, Tobe. But Diener wrote it, and he wrote it talking about the defendant has been charged in a high-profile cause, creating potential safety and security concerns because of extensive coverage that we caused, by the way, and begged for from an array of various media platforms that we are going to pretend like we have not been begging to report very specific stuff for us, both mainstream and social media throughout the state, the United States, and the world. Okay, I'm pretty sure Tobe he was not thinking about the entire world when he wrote this. And so Diener obviously included that because he is an actual weirdo. Diener is a strange one. Okay, so then we have, after Diener writes that, he's like, bye-bye. Ask for a special judge. And of course, the order appointing Goal is dated on November 3rd, but it's filed on the 4th. Diener pieces out after doing this whole safekeeping order. That is, Arnhem has gone over this extensively. It is ridiculous. It should terrify anybody who has a husband, a brother, a son, or a friend. This shit should terrify you, especially if you're fond of them like I am. I have a lot of them that I'm fond of. And I'd be pretty fucking pissed if someone tried to show up telling me this was all I needed to, like, uh, I'd have already been held in contempt. I will tell you that. So Diener signs the order that he actually pretty much wrote himself. Like, parody. The other thing that happens on the 3rd, while he's already written a letter asking the court's mercy, and they're signing orders on the same day that this man is there's a mental health order for him before he's ever appointed counsel at Westville. This is on the 3rd. He's already there, apparently getting an evaluation. He's potentially stopped off at the Reception Diagnostic Center, where they're supposed to do actual intakes. And there's a state form, I think it's like 55913 or something ridiculous. It's like a random name, but there's all these things that would have to apply to someone who's convicted but hasn't been sentenced, but there's no protocol for the situation this man is in. And so they put him in a suicide watch cell, and over the next year, they're going to go back and forth explaining on whether or not this was because he was showing signs that would meet the criteria to put him on that, or because he's in danger or he's posing a danger or under danger. They don't substantiate any of this shit that they're doing. This is this has all happened in the span of like a week. He's going from Holeman yelling at him to Diener telling him that he's asking for private counsel because nobody's appointed it yet, to him begging for the court's mercy, which is a real quick turnaround for someone to go shopping, to begging, to being evaluated. And this Mr. Allen's letter is still not even filed at this point. He has no counsel, and Diener, McClellan, Holder, or not Holder, Holeman, whatever, both those dipshits. Who know? Holder may have known. Who knows? All of the state knows that this is happening, and they're all well aware that whether he's seeking private counsel or not, he has not spoken with counsel. He has not been counseled. He asked for he has to leave. He was not let. Holeman was like, "No, why don't you sit tight instead, and I'm going to close this door." And then instead of coming back in to pick up where they left off, he starts berating him again and threatening him and doing all this other dumb shit that didn't even work. He never let him leave. He never let him call an attorney. In my mind, it's hard not to assume that the only reason Mr. Allen said that is because they were not letting him make a phone call to one, or they were trying to tell him, oh, well, it could take a while. It's a small county, small resources. We don't just have those kind of people on staff. We don't have those kind of people on hand. Because that's like, the more I read of their filings and reports, the harder it is to just not take it from that report and put it into this, into this circumstance, because they say the same dumb shit no matter what little mess they've made. And it just blows my mind that he's being designated as a person on suicide watch who's going to be placed in solitary for his own safety, for all these other reasons, for stuff that there's been no evidence of. There's no evidence he was involved in this. There's no evidence that there were threats against his life. There's no evidence that Carroll County could not have just left him there for the weekend. By the way, nobody knew it was actually him. Everybody's confused and thinking it was some other dude. Like, it's incredible to me how one thing was able to snowball into another thing, into another thing, into another thing, and it was allowed to just keep proceeding. Like, this is an actual court of law. This is an actual process that we're supposed to run a certain way, and they're just proceeding with or without information, facts, validating shit. They're just taking what, I guess, whoever Holman's like, fuck, I arrested him, fuck this guy, take him in, and they're like, okay, well, what do we do? Oh yeah, he totally admitted this or that, and they're like, oh yeah, for sure. I guarantee you, the first time any of the people who were on duty that day found out any of this dumb shit Holman said was probably from the defense filing, because they just are not. They're not checking anybody's work. If they say it, that's all it like, even Goal, like, as long as the prosecutor said it, for a year she let this dumb shit drag on. It took her a year to get a fucking clue and vacate this order. And it caused so much damage to the actual case. And people are still running around blaming defense for all this dumb shit. Keep in mind, their defense has not even entered any of this yet. All this dumb shit I'm talking about predates these defense attorneys, or any defense attorneys, or anybody for this man. He had, at best, he had a quote. He did not have counsel. He didn't even kind of have counsel. He had a quote, and that is about it. And it takes another couple of weeks before anything different happens. And I think, let's see, November 8th is the next. He still doesn't have counsel, by the way. There's a suicide form that's entered, like, it just randomly. Hang on. Oh, I guess I haven't. Hang on. I meant to click the PDF, not the doc. Hold on. Oh yeah, State Farm. Maybe it'll let me. If it lets me redirect, I'll pull this up. This is what I was talking about a minute ago. Let me make sure it's actually showing on my share screen. Um, there are rules on how you do just about anything in a state, like on an official capacity, as like if you're a public official or working on behalf of the state, there are rules that you're supposed to follow. I don't know why Carroll County has such a hard time with that, but they do. But apparently, so does DOC. But there's a lot of stuff in here that I'm trying to figure out why they were doing this for a man who had not been convicted or sentenced or even had counsel yet. And he didn't actually even meet a lot of the, like, even like the checklist for safekeeper. Um, Whenever a facility is contacted by a court or a sheriff's department about housing, the warden or designee shall refer them to the director of operational support services. The director shall review the request, the safekeeping order, and complete state form. This one, that's what I meant to pull up, the 47723. Um, they shall forward a recommendation to the chief of staff or the deputy commissioner or whoever else is in charge of fucking shit up, I guess. The director will advise the court and the sheriff's staff of the designated per diem cost for housing and medical care, which will be billed to the requesting county on a monthly basis. And the only reason that's important is because Liggett and McLeland are like, put it on Carroll County's tab. We got we got 2 mil. We're good. They don't give a shit about any of this. They don't care about what's going on, if any of this is correct. But if you read further down, I forget how many pages this is. There's another one that's like 50 pages that I'm not done reading through, but none of this makes any sense whatsoever on how they justified any of this and how any of this is. I mean, he is like in a prison moving through the system as if he has been charged, tried, convicted, sentenced, and then transferred from a county jail into a prison. And now he's being evaluated for all kinds of crazy shit because of something he's done. I mean, they have skipped so much shit, and that's where he is. He does not have an attorney yet. This is I'm having a hard time with this because anybody there that day, this could have been Dave McCain. This could have been the oh my gosh, I'm blanking out on his name. The guy on Criminality's Prezi who was walking his dog at one point. There was one guy who was there with his daughter earlier. This could be any of them. It's not about whether or not this is Mr. Allen. This is just like this is someone. This is a person. He is being shackled and evaluated and poked and prodded, and people are designating him and putting him in solitary. He has not. He has have had. He's had no counsel. And by the way, the state has no evidence against him. They have literally nothing, and they're allowed to just move this far into it. I I get stuck on loop with this because it's terrifying that it could happen to anyone. And what's really irritating is this whole time the state is preparing this PR campaign about how scared everyone should be because there's more people out there. And technically that's true because whoever did it is still out there, but they're trying to act like Mr. Allen had anything to do with whoever those people are. Because a year from now, in all these filings, a year from now, both Liggett and Holeman are going to be given testimony that all the reasons they spend the month of November trying to bluff their way through, trying to emotionally manipulate the judge into sealing this shit out of fear. They've got people writing petitions. They're pulling the family into this. Oh my gosh, if we unseal this, these mean old defense attorneys are going to ruin our solid investigation because they're trying to get this child murderer off. Like this just dumb shit, emotional pleas that they're dragging the families into doing, all because of what is happening right now, actually, because they did jump the gun. They took Holman's word for a lot of shit when they shouldn't have. McLuhan took Mullen's word for a lot of shit when he shouldn't have. Nobody's checking their work, and this man is already knee deep into the system. And then I don't know at what point any of these law enforcement officers actually did fill the prosecutor in on anything. I am very curious to know at what point Nick realized just truly how how not solid this case was, because he was going on TV talking about how rock solid all this is. There's lit there's I'm at a loss for words with how it must have been desperation, because I don't understand how else they could have done that, because I I, can't, I don't know how you call any of this solid. Even the bullet. I understand in some cases when you tell juries ballistics is as good as a fingerprint or whatever. Hopefully they will find a good expert to put it into the proper context for what it is and what it's not. Hopefully the judge will actually let this man defend himself, and hopefully defense can point out that the prosecutor has not actually connected this bullet to the crime scene or explained any of that. So how are we already talking about this? So why are we even trying to argue over a subjective finding that by definition is just based on opinion and in your experience? One of the only ways I ever know how to relate the whole professional judgment thing when it comes to cops is there's something crazy like approximately 10 million arrests are made every year in the United States. 10 million, that's a lot. There's 18,000 law enforcement agencies, and they arrest about 10,000 or about 10 million people every single year, give or take, obviously. It's a rough estimate, but like average, whatever. Less than 5% are even for violent crimes. Less than 5% out of all of that. And then you've got to factor in the fact that the overwhelming majority of crimes go unreported and unknown to law enforcement. Not all crimes get reported, and the data on that is very interesting. It's kind of fascinating, actually, because when you realize what police are basing their professional judgment on, it is a tiny fraction of the actual crimes that are committed. So maybe in their experience, in this percentage of a percentage, maybe that's what's happened in those cases. We know what happens in an officer or an examiner's professional experience, but like by default, that is a limited thing. Just because they don't have a full set to compare it to, and it's just, I don't know, what is it called? We have the knowns, the unknowns, and the known unknowns, or or whatever. There's a lot of that with this, and the fact that this has been able to get this far in the process, I can't make any sense of. Hang on, I'm trying to reload my screen here. Lost recordings probably started when they were doing yeah, something. If my internet was not taking forever to load, I'd probably pull that up. Let's see, Holeman didn't start the tape because he didn't give work. Yeah, I know. And he's trying real hard to get around that. He said these unnamed detectives totally heard it. I'm so sure, Holeman. Anyway, this is one of the things that I've been digging into that I would like to make, obviously, into a more digestible timeline, but I still have several weeks of filings to go through to make sure I'm not missing something or there wasn't an update to it. But from what I can tell, they got this. Jay Harper had that certificate of analysis on the 19th, and Unified Command didn't do anything but play phone tag with Kathy and Rick Allen about when to come get his car, because that is It's subjective. It's not evidence. It doesn't mean anything. But what drives me crazy is what changed from having that same piece of paper when Mr. Allen walked in until the time Holeman was having a meltdown, screaming and hollering, and just threatening and lying. And I mean, it was just a hissy fit. I don't know how else to call it. That was some dumb shit. And Mr. Allen's under arrest because he was not giving Holeman the answers Holeman was trying to berate him into giving. He denied everything the whole time. So it's even more confusing to me about what he could have had. But he did say he wanted to leave, and Holeman ended up leaving the room and closing the door behind him instead, and then coming in not too much longer, and like, okay, wait, okay, yeah, no, I get it, yeah, I'm sorry, I probably got a little heated, like, then he starts talking him into circles again, and then 2 hours later, he's in custody, and a day later, Nick is filing a probable cause affidavit, which looks to be just copy and pasted from the search warrant, and they just were digging up anything that they could add to it to make it look like they had done something. But I mean, they had 2 weeks to from the time they got that stupid certificate to the time they're filing all this. They had more time to come up. They had time to come up with more than they had, but they didn't have everything they have on Mr. Allen is in that PCA, and it's not. It's circumstantial at best, but it's subjective. So I don't know how that's going to go. But I'm really concerned about this. Holeman's writing a report the same day Mr. Allen is begging, literally begging for counsel. He's in a maximum security prison being evaluated and considered for suicide watch before his pleas are even heard. Diener is putting out orders and recusing himself before anybody can do anything about it. And then even more weeks go by before he even has counsel, and at the first thing the defense attorneys try to do is their goddamn job by reviewing the PCA and making a basic statement on it. These people have had 6 years of press conferences and documentaries and podcasts to put all this information out, and they arrest a man, and so everything they've ever heard, everybody's trying to make it fit against this man that they just named. And defense is like, okay, well, we're trying to figure out how the man from the PCA is the man they've been talking about. Like, this man is confused, he's innocent. Like, the first time they get to speak, Nick throws a hissy fit tantrum, starts woke scolding everybody. And I have questions about, I want to see how many times Mr. Allen asked to leave, how many times he asked for counsel. I want to know how that actually happened. I want to know if he asked for an attorney before saying he wanted to find private counsel. I would like to know if that was something, like, did he wait until the 28th to say he wanted an attorney? I feel like that it would have come up before then, whether he wanted his own attorney or not. And I don't know that we're ever going to find that. The other question I have, especially for the actual attorneys in this space, is the protective order. I can't pull it up now because I am going to have to forego because I forgot to charge my laptop. Um, I've got like 6% left. So I'm going to end on this note, but the protective order where it's talking about the only way any of this information ever on this case can be used is only in court. It can't be used for educational purposes or anything. Basically, once this case is over, the way it's worded makes it seem like nobody can even learn from this after the fact. Like, learn from all the mistakes to, when you know better, you do better. There's none of that even. I need clarification on the language used in that protective order. I think it was in February of 2023. I cannot find it right now. Yeah, I need to understand if that only applies through the duration of the trial, because the way it was worded sounded like it. I understand that all of the case file, like that actually does belong to the defendant, which is good and fine. I'm not trying to take away from that, but that's what, if anybody can help me understand, at least in Indiana, is there some Indiana specific thing that that stems from or comes from, or why? Let's see. Just like the 911 calls from Flora. I don't know what I missed, but yeah, that's. I was reading the on case text about the Florida 911 calls and how they were able to get out of releasing those. And there was a journalist who was almost going to get them. That is one of these days. I try not to even let myself think about Florida yet, because I feel like there are some people who have been already on top of that. And I will meet them there when I get done with this. But I am um, I have to, I'm committing to one thing and putting my brain towards one thing at a time. That's just better. That's just how it works. Let me see. Holeman closed the door. That would seem to imply he was in custody, yet no Miranda warning. Total breach of due process. He said, "I'm out of here," but well, in fact, yeah, he did. There was, at least in the filing, there could have been more, but there's 3 that we know of times where Holeman left. 2 of those times, he told Mr. Allen to sit tight, and he left the room, closed the door, and like left him there. And the other time, he said something to the effect of, "Give me a minute," kind of like, "Hang on a second, and then you can go." But basically, every time was, "You stay put. I'm coming back. You're staying there. Wait for me." But he closed the door every time. And at one point, Mr. Allen was very clear and said, "I'm done. This is bullshit." And the next timestamp we get is Holeman leaving the room and closing the door. So I don't know if that was the first time in that little gap of time that he would have asked for an attorney, or Holeman started playing games with him, because there's like a 40-minute gap in between the first time he says, "I'm done," and the next timestamp we get. And I know some people like to fill in those blanks that defense doesn't. Well, why didn't defense do the prosecutor's job? They don't understand that they're answering their own question, number one, because this man has rights. He does not have to, and he shouldn't have to, and we shouldn't set that precedent specifically for innocent people. Like, innocent people should not be having to go through this to prove they're innocent. Like, the state should be proving who's guilty. That's how this works. I don't know why that's so hard for some people, but that's kind of where I'm at with, when some people are like, "Well, why isn't defense?" Just do the prosecutor's job. And I don't know what to tell those people. I don't think any answer I give them is going to work for them anyway. They were like that with the video dash cam as well, and the media had to take legal action to retain it. Yes, they did. I remember reading through some of that. I have a whole folder of bookmarks to go back to with Laura, because it's hard to avoid it when looking into this case with the same cast of characters. But if anything, hopefully untangling some of, I mean, this case is riddled with misconduct. The state has a hard time recognizing misconduct for what it is when it's committed by the state. It's just because they are inherently biased. They don't like to, they're not self aware enough to always recognize it. But the same cast of characters causing trouble here or causing trouble there. I know some people think that it has to be a conspiracy, and it does. It's not a conspiracy in the way that they're trying to dismiss it as. It's just there's problems with the way they're investigating and conducting themselves. Like, corruption doesn't have to be a haha, I want to be evil, I'm maniacal. Like, if a file is corrupted, it's because it was corrupted. It's no longer usable. It's no longer a file that you can access or proceed with because it's corrupted. It doesn't have to be intentional. Corruption is a problem whether it's intentional or not. And this prosecutor seems to think that if they didn't mean to hurt anybody's feelings, then they're not responsible for fucking up. And I think that's baby brain, but let's see. I know. I wish they were here. I do one of these nights. I do want to talk to Travis and Michael because they could probably clear a lot of stuff up for me. But a corrupted file is a good code name. Let me see. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, hang on, they've got away with. Yeah, they have gotten away with stuff. They're not ever held accountable because every time they do something wrong, they're like, "Oh, but I didn't mean to." Okay, I don't know why that matters. Like whether you meant to or not, if you got it wrong, I'm not real worried about how you felt about it or how you feel about it. Like you still have a job to do, and they seem to struggle with that part. They seem to think it's the public's job to solve this for them, and then it's or apparently the assistant manager at CVS's job. And that isn't kind of like I am with the Doolin tip. I can't get past a lot of stuff with the Doolin thing. I cannot get past the state. For some reason, their whole theory is entirely dependent on. Turns out we had no fucking clue what happened this whole time, and we didn't have a clue until the guy who works at CVS who fills all of our prescriptions showed up and explained it to us. And they've been real sketchy about showing us what this man explained to them or actually explained to a bunch of inmates. And that game of telephone, and when he broke his tablet and didn't break his tablet, and when he got a new one, and when he was on suicide, like the state cannot keep their story straight from this point on, of the arrest to the confusion of how we got into Westville and everything that happened after that. It's 1 month after another of. I don't know where that discovery is. I don't know what this professor is. We actually had no suspects ever. And then somehow it's turned into, we have people, actual podcasters, acting like this is actually some 3D chess game that the state they knew it all along or something. I don't know. It's embarrassing. But, I mean, it could have been Mr. Allen. It could have been Dave McCain. It could have been the guy that took his daughter out there. It could have been whoever it was walking down 300 or the other McCain. This could have happened to anybody. And all it took was a desperate wannabe sheriff and fucking Holeman and Mullen, the guy who deleted all this shit, who ended up begging the judge, "Oh, we've been investigating this. This is a very complicated case. We actually need you to keep this quiet because I've been on this case from day one, and we have these other suspects that in about a year I'm going to pretend we never actually looked into because they were not suspects." Like, the warden has walked back all of his testimony. Liggett and Holman have sworn one thing and then walked it back a year later. I don't understand how the judge is not concerned about any of this. She's acting like the defense is not meeting any of their obligations when the state has not proved a single thing. They have not proved that Mr. Allen committed any crime on any day. And he's been in solitary this whole time. That should terrify people. Yeah. DNR and how powerful. So, yeah, I mean, I think I harp on some of these details because I do think they matter. I think they matter for your husband, my husband, your son, mine, brother. I don't care. This is not how we do things. And it really irritates me when people start lowering the bar for prosecutors and police officers and judges and start making excuses for why they shouldn't be meeting the burdens that they campaign and promise that they're going to do with any kind of honor, and they're not doing it at all. And they're blaming everybody else. Anytime there's a mistake, it's a mean old defense attorney or those people on social media. It's the whiniest. I don't like whining. That like if you whine about dumb shit, you're already on the wrong foot with me. I just don't, especially when you're in a like if you have a badge and you're being coddled while whining about how someone has the wrong opinion or wasn't nice enough or I don't know, like that is just those people are not in reality. They're not reasonable, and I think it's scary that they're the ones overseeing this. Like this judge has not seen all of these red flags, and she's the one who's supposed to be in charge of calling balls and strikes. It's concerning. His husband, you know what I mean. Yes, I'm concerned for DB's husband. All the transcripts should be back to back. Yeah. And at some point, we're going to do a trivia night that we do put all of this stuff aside for to raise money for tea. I promise to keep, like, I will not have any, I will leave all my strong opinions in my car. um, because I just want to help T raise some money, crowdfund some funds for the transcripts, because I'm pretty sure her and Travis are also trying to get a hold of some other stuff. And a lot of this stuff it takes a lot of work. So I want to just take one thing off her plate if possible, and hopefully we can have some fun in the meantime, and hopefully everybody can put stuff aside. Um, I don't know when we're going to do trivia night. I got to figure that out, but we are going to try to do that. I'm going to take that off because that keeps making me laugh. Let's see. So yeah. But these are sometimes people are like, well, what can I do either to help or do you need help with this? Like I have had some people who have started helping and it is helpful. But one of the biggest things is like hold the state and even the journalists who are the ones informing the public on what's happening, hold them to the actual facts of the case. Remind people that this is the state's job and they have a burden, and it is not Mr. Allen's job to explain what did or didn't happen out there. His job was to fill people's prescriptions or check people out, make sure the truck got loaded on time, and make sure everybody showed up. That was actually his job. It was not his job to help law enforcement, but he did it anyway. I wish he wouldn't have. I wish most people wouldn't have, because it usually doesn't go well, because when cops don't actually have a clue what happened, after this many years, they're going to stop caring and they're just going to want to close it whether it's solved or not. And once they close ranks behind someone, that someone is fucked. And that's just how it is. And I think it's scary. And I think more people should be honest about it, because I know I've never met a good cop who gets offended by that. Like, they're usually the ones who are tired of dealing with the people like Holeman, who are the ones getting promoted above the good ones. Like, they're usually just as fed up as I am. In my experience, that has been, they're the ones who have stronger opinions than I do about it. And I'm just about done answering questions from people like Ruckus about loaded questions about how I feel about law enforcement. Well, I feel the same way about law enforcement the way I do about teachers and nurses and people who are in charge of other people. I don't like the bad ones. I love the good ones, though. I think the good ones should be the ones who are getting the promotions, and the bad ones should be the ones um, having having consequences. That's just where I'm at with it. And it, I will say this: this is very true, but there are some local journalists in that area who if you ever go back to the early days, I think it's mid-November is when the media intervener motions start in 2022. They do some pretty good work calling Diener on his bullshit and then calling Judge Gold on it, because judges don't like to overturn another, like if one judge orders it, they don't want to change it. They try to just status quo kind of shit. Well, the only reason Judge Gold was able to deal with Diener misapplying rules to hide shit was because the media interveners, I can't ever say it, interveners, made it impossible for her not to. And I don't know where all those journalists went from the time of that one, because they filed some more later in around like March, April of 2023. And I feel like we haven't heard enough from them since then. I don't know where those ones went, but we could definitely use some of them coming back. Let's see. But yeah, but when you're talking about like HLN journalists and court TV journalists, yes, they're access journalists. They'll we've seen with Murder Sheet. It's almost embarrassing at this point. One of these days, I'm just gonna go through all their interviews on like Wish TV and stuff, because most of it did not age very well. it's it is funny, but it's also scary, because the dumb shit they repeat just because a cop told it to them is hilarious. I mean, that's one of these days we're gonna do a deep dive on Murder Sheet, and we're gonna do a postmortem on all of their work on this case and see which things held up and which things didn't. But yeah, my laptop is about to die, so I'm gonna close this out before it cuts me off. But I always appreciate people listening to me actually ramble. Um, but the timeline of the events from the 26th to November 3rd, I would like to personally ask people to put those dates in the back. Like if you see when you're reading the filings or listening to the reports, those dates are important, because this man was literally kidnapped and put away before he ever had counsel. And I know people are just really quick to just make up excuses or rationalize why the state would have, for some reason, had a good reason to do that. They didn't have a good reason. This is not okay. And that's just where I'm at with it. And let's see, I can use my press. Yes. Let's see. Make what happened when I miss. I think he said go to the hearings. Yeah, I have I have people in my life who are as well. And I think people who I actually think people who don't have members of law enforcement in their family are the ones who are the ones actually running around white knighting for bad cops, because they just think they're all good and they don't actually know, like, a lot of cops are dicks, even the good ones. Like, there's a certain type, and they'll tell you there's good ones and bad ones. They don't like the bad ones either, and they don't get mad. What they do get mad at is when you hold up a bad cop like Holeman and lower the bar for someone like Holeman and Liggett and try to put them on the same playing field. That's the shit they don't like. When people like Holeman get promoted, when there are actual people out there solving crimes, and Holeman has a string of losses and unsolved shit, and that's what they don't like. Let's see. So yes, let's see. Super deep dive on the red Jeep. Well, yeah, we're gonna. I am one of these days. We got to deep dive Murder Sheets. Their intel, because it a lot of it lines up with some stuff in the court filings that all goes back to either Holeman or Vito or Harper. And they're all testifying under oath that it all turns out to be complete bullshit. So at least we know Murder Sheet's not big on actually verifying anything. As long as you tell it to them, they're like, okay, this is true. Whether it's true or not, as long as you show them a screenshot of something. Apparently, that's what they think journalism is screenshots. It's terrifying, also. Let's see. Yeah. I'm sure I've missed comments, which I hate, but it happens. Um, let's see. Trivia night will be awesome. That's the last one. I think it's going to let me scroll up too. But yes, I could probably talk about this case way too long. There's just so many issues with it and stuff that should be easy to fix, and it's just allowed to go on not fixed. I think that's also what drives me so crazy. But I appreciate everybody who did show up to listen to me ramble and who continues helping give me the motivation to continue rambling. I appreciate that as well. Everybody enjoy your night. If Travis and Fiona are still rambling, I'll probably catch that. I have no idea if they still are or not. But one of these days, Travis is welcome to come ramble over here, and Osbert too. One of these days. But everybody enjoy your night, enjoy your weekend, and yeah, we'll see you.